cooperative mindset, or willing mindset, I guess, to ask for help where we just don't know what we don't know. And I kind of want to talk a little bit about the culture here in San Antonio and like what you've experienced, you know, is what this market is like as far as video production goes. Yeah. Is it collaborative? Is it competitive? Tell us a little bit about what you see here.
I would say San Antonio is in that sleeper state. So we are culturally the city, I feel, and this is just like from my anecdotally, right? So I didn't do any surveys to know this, but anecdotally, I feel like the city is very much a passive city when it comes to video production and photo production. That's why it's very difficult to find reliable videographers in the town. In terms of competition, there's probably about 5 to 10 working video production companies. And it was very easy for me to just get on the top of Google because I'd put in a little bit of effort. But if you go to a place like Austin that has a ton of videographers, or a place like Atlanta that has a ton of video production companies, tons of creative people, tons of motivated people to be in it, then you're gonna actually see like real competition. Yeah. In San Antonio, it's pretty much in a sleeper state, but because it's so big, there's so much opportunity. I always tell people, I'm an open book because I don't believe in competition. There's 300,000 businesses in San Antonio. And there's only about 10 or 20 of us that are working. There's yes. Like, why even compete? If anything, we are hurting ourselves by not talking to each other, more so than, you know, being very secretive or restrictive about our things. Like I'm one of the most open book people ever. So like, and I'm always doing that. Like I have a freelance network of people that, and I built the freelance network because it was very difficult to find those people. So a part of that network of freelancers that I work with, of videographers and photographers, I'm building up their skills, and I'm encouraging them to ask questions about what I'm doing, because if I can have 2 or 3 or 4 more of me, then we can take over the world. It's just not, you know, it's just not here in San Antonio right now. San Antonio is it's a little behind on that, and not just on the production side, but also on the client side. People are still, and I always say San Antonio is always 10 or 15 years behind Austin. Like people are still trying to grasp like you know, the power of video, trying to get online. A lot of people don't have an in-house marketing staff. A lot of people work with agencies that, you know, that are kind of like a one-size-fits-all kind of deal. A lot of people don't have any social media presence. Some people, you know, in my time, I've set up quite a few websites too, because people don't have websites, and it's just that's pretty much the state of San Antonio. It's big. There's a lot of opportunity if you are willing to go and get it.
Yeah, that's really interesting. You know, Spokane is similar and different. It's very small compared to San Antonio, right? What's the population here?
About 3 million.
3 million, which we just can't even fathom, because we top out like near 500,000, I think, in our whole county.
For the region.
For the region, not even the city.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. There's people that fall into either a scarcity mindset or a abundance mindset. And kind of our philosophy is, if you are good at what you're doing and you're passionate about it, you do not need to be worried about the competition, because you can work together and you know, collaborate and learn a lot from each other. But if what you're doing is good, you're going to get the business. It's out there. People will see the value in it. Right. But that scarcity mindset is, I think, rooted in insecurity of, is what I have to offer good enough? You know, and if you're really trying to protect that, then, you know,
or they're just bad at business.
Or bad at business.
Yeah,
you know?
I mean, I've seen that too, where it's like they're just bad at business, and so they like grasp desperately for whatever they get, to the point of like hurting and, you know,
and we've been there. I think there's also a growth and a maturity that happens in business in time, you know, where you have to have that reflective ability, and I think taking time for that can be really difficult when you're a solo entrepreneur, a small team, like to pause and do, you know, like reach out to people like a business coach or somebody to dial back and go, what are my goals? What are my objectives? What are my blind spots? And if we don't take that inventory, and that's really hard to make that time on your own, like you could be missing out. And
well, it really highly depends on the person that you are in general too. If you are a person that can't take any sort of feedback or constructive criticism, then how are you ever expected to grow? And the same applies for business too. Like if you have to be willing to put aside your not just your beliefs, but you have to be willing to put aside your ego and your pride. You have to put all that aside to be able to learn a new perspective and be able to grow as an individual, as a business maker, and as a filmmaker ultimately. So so definitely a big part of that, and a lot of the creatives that I've met, it's very difficult for them to take like any feedback, and that's just like, well, if you want to know if you're good enough for your clients, ask for a review and see what they say, and post your review online, and you'll have confidence. You know, after a certain point, you have so many reviews, it selling it speaks for itself. You don't have to sell anymore.
Well, and that's such a that's innate now to almost our human experience, is to Google something and look at the reviews and make your decision based off of that. And so, that kind of brings up the question I had about, like, when you're in business, there's a level of marketing that has to happen. People need to know you exist and what you do and your level of work. And I'm curious about like how you prioritize your marketing and balance the time commitment that happens for social media, for the networking that needs to happen, building leads. Like, how do you make those priorities?
So I have a series of protocols. It's probably like the simplest way to think about it. I don't actually block out my time like on a pie chart or like, I want to do 20% this week on here, 20% on here. Really, I set up protocols for myself, and I use Google Calendar, and then I also work in Notion. So pretty much my protocols, they're not really like goalposts, but they're more like, this is just what I'm going to do now from now on. So like social media, for example, I spent a couple months researching what the best plan to do for social media for 2024, what I'm going to personally, to commit myself to. And I'm just going to commit myself to 2 posts a week, 25 comments per day, and 1 blog post a week. That's my goal, and if I do that consistently, then I can pull data from it. Pretty much that's what I do for everything. So I have a bunch of protocols set up, and that's one of those things. There's too much work to do now because I just have too much to do. And I have a buddy that he's a photographer, and starting out, he's always thinking like, how do I get leads, or what do I do? There's if I'm working for myself, there's nothing to do, when no calls are coming in. And I'm on the other side saying like, there's too much for me to do because I have too much to do. And really you have to come up with routines to do every single day. So and a lot of what I do is pretty much sales and marketing. So when I'm not in my CRM, which we use Pipedrive, or if I'm not managing a project in Notion, I am trying to answer the big questions about the business, and trying just constantly grinding out the big answers. So in terms of like dedicated stuff that like I'm gonna do, like social media, I'll set up routines for that. But like my day-to-day is really just trying to solve the bigger questions.
Well, and go ahead.
I was gonna say, do you have any like channels or whatever that you follow as mentors for your business or marketing side of what you do?
So probably like the most prominent one would probably be The Future. So Chris Do. It's spelled The Future without the E at the end. And he's kind of like in design and video production, but yeah, that's definitely a great resource to really open up your mind about where the business should go. Yeah, that's definitely the big one. But I'll listen to them in waves. So you can. So if I am ever feeling like stuck in a rut, I'll just listen to them. But for the most part, I wake up every day, work from like 10 to 7, eat dinner, and work from like 10 p.m. to like 1 a.m. Like there's just nonstop stuff for me to do. It's very rare that I'm like in a rut, and normally it's like end of the year I'll be like, okay, well, at the end of the year, so many projects are wrapping up and they're finally finishing and finally have time to work on the business. I'm able to kind of close everything up with a nice bow, take a few weeks to really reassess what happened the previous year, and implement those plans in the next year. So I will definitely start listening and start gathering from mentors and podcasts and think about what I'm going to do. But that always is like end of the year stuff. Beginning of the year is very much like setting up new processes and implementing it.
For sure.
Yeah. And I think like that gathering of data and then reading that, you got to implement, you got to evaluate, and then you pivot. And what's really interesting about what you're laying out is a blend of so many different strengths that usually are singular to people, right? So you're talking about the 30,000 foot view, which is, when you look down at your business and get the lay of the land, and you can see so far out on the horizon of like, where are we going? Where am I taking this? And then you're also talking about like that 10,000 foot view of like social media strategy and kind of how you're going to get there. And then you've got the ground level of like, this is me behind the camera shooting what I'm shooting, right? And I think for people that are listening, like, when you talk about a workflow of, from 10 to 7 and then again after dinner, like that's not everybody's reality and that's not everybody's strength. And I think that's super important is the self-awareness you have. Like I recommend Strengths Finders as a really great start for people to take an assessment and kind of find out like, you're really heavy on the execution side. Like you have no problem having a task list and going after it. And it's invigorating, I imagine, to you at the end of the day to have gotten so much done and be able to go like, I'm headed this direction. But that doesn't, it fires me up if you can't tell. I love that kind of thing. I'm an executor, right? I'm also a refiner. So I love streamlining processes. Where can we get more efficient? Like that actually, like, woo, at the end of the day, I want to party if I make things more efficient.
I'm on the same boat. Yeah,
right.
Totally.
But for listeners out there, especially if you're in like videography, like the reality is, you might feel woohoo when you're behind the camera 100% of the time. And the rest could feel like the death of you and there's nothing wrong with you. But I think it is really important for people to measure out like, then is it for me to be a solo entrepreneur? Or then where do I need to allot time and energy to finding people who know better than I know? Like there's nothing better than surrounding yourself by people that know better than you, because you're either going to learn it or they're going to be in your pocket elevating your work. And I just, I love like what you're saying is so like, so powerful for, I think, illustrating the different skills and the way that you have to look out further than right here. You can't go into photography or videography and go, the business is going to come to me.
Yeah. For
sure. And be behind the camera 100% of the time. It will not happen. Right. I
have my own metaphor. Same metaphor. I use it all the time with people just starting to get in. Like I'm blessed that I love doing it a lot, like pretty much everything.
Yes.
On the field though, I don't like audio. I hate audio. It's just like audio.
Right. It's a beautiful confession.
But, right. Yes. Yeah. I am not an audio guy.
Yeah.
But I outsource audio. I know guys that audio is like their thing. They have a whole kit. They have 12 lavs. They have the booms. They have C-stands. They have the professional headphones. If I can just find somebody that is good at that, it fills that gap. So recognizing what those gaps are is probably the first step to running a business. You have to recognize what you like and what you don't like and what you're going to do to fill that hole, because at the end of the day, a video needs audio. You need video, or you need audio to make a good video. And you're right. I've learned from the audio guys that I've hired, and now I don't outsource them anymore. I just have the equipment now. I know what I'm doing with audio. Lighting was a big one for me too back in the day. Like I was very much an event shooter, and I didn't want to buy a bunch of lights. I always dreaded carrying C-stands. I'm like, I don't want to buy C-stands. They're so heavy. And now I have nothing but C-stands and lights, and I have it now because it's necessary to grow the business. So, I totally agree with what you said. Like totally on board. Like that is like 100%. Like what I live for is the growing part.
Yes. Yeah. That's so good. Yeah. Well, go ahead. I thought you were going to say something. Okay. Well, I'm just curious, you know, I think like, number one, I love that you confess, like, I hate audio, and I think
Well,
that's
I'm not
just,
perfect.
yes. And I think that's really important to like, just pause and go like, what is just like the thorn in my side whenever I have to work and do this one thing? And like, how do I solve that problem? And learning it firsthand might not be the solution. It might be finding someone else. And, so I'm curious because I think, you know, you know, as business owners, the point usually is to grow business. Some people might not have that as a goal for whatever reason, but like as you grow, you know, if you want to grow, you're going to take all manner of jobs. You have to be flexible. You need to be able to pivot and that kind of thing. But I also think that there are certain jobs that just scratch that itch, that energize you and really are exciting. So like if there was a niche, like a particular area or type of film project that like you could get more of, or like what ones get you excited?
That's a loaded question.
Okay.
That's a big question
Cool.
for me.
Fire away.
So I'm very like, and we had talked a little bit about this before the podcast. I'm very 50-50. I'm very business oriented. I'm also very creative oriented. I feel like as I grow into this business, I am starting to become more and more business oriented, 60-70% business.
So pulling
oriented.
more out of the on the ground and more into that 10,000 foot,
Right.
30,000 foot.
And honestly, the original goal, right, was, you know, I got, you have to also think, I haven't really told you like my full trajectory or what my career path is, but like you have to also remember contextually, like I got into this or I fell in love with filmmaking because of the behind the scenes for Lord of the Rings. Yeah. I love just the culture, the feel, everybody, you know, thousands of people coming together to create something magical that will last for hundreds of years. Yeah. At the end of the day, my ultimate goal at the top of Mount Everest is to become a director, a filmmaker. Wonderful. To become like a Spielberg or a Nolan or you know, a Denis, or like pretty much just like directing and become, you know, making stories, making movies. That is the finish line for me, being way at the top over there. But in order to do that, I have to grow the business to where it can run without me. Sure. So, in terms of like, you know, what space do I want to get in more? It really is just what's the next best step for me. Sure. So,
but the ultimate sounds like cinematic.
Yeah.
Very cinematic.
The ultimate would be making movies, you know, making full-scale productions, and telling stories, telling hopefully original stories, you know, as original as they can be. Nothing's really original right now, but original with a twist, you know, or you know, the same story but with a twist. Yeah, eventually that is, you know, the path that I'm on, and the path that I'm definitely going to stay on. And really, if you set a goal that's astronomical like that, and you can keep working towards that goal forever, right? I mean, you know, there are people that, you know, will go to school for a number of years, they get their dream job, they land their dream job, and they're 27, and it's like, what now? You know, and they're like, what now? And they don't know what to do with themselves, and their whole life they were that person. They were a career student. They finally landed the job, and that's totally fine. I mean, you know, if they want to do that, that's totally fine. It's up to them. Some people want to be in that space, but for me, I set myself that goal because I want to be that. Yes. I want to get into that space eventually, but I can't step away from the business until it can run without me. I'm very close. I'm like probably like 6 months to a year to cracking the code and being able to just hire people and then step away and start doing like my own projects.
Yeah. And I think the skill sets that you've, you know, developed in being an entrepreneur and like organization and stuff, like I think that'll serve you really well as a director, because there's one of my favorite podcasts is the Team Deacons podcast. So it's Roger Deakins and his wife James Deakins, and it's just amazing because they have people from all parts of like the film industry, and just hearing what like directors and like their trajectory of directors and how, you know, like the first time they're on like a big movie set, just how many moving pieces there are, and how like, confusing and confounding that can be, and then like the next time they direct on like a larger budget production, they're like, okay, but there's like so many moving pieces. You're almost more of like, I mean, you obviously have the vision, and the vision for what the movie and the feel and the style and the visuals are going to be like. And that ultimately comes down to you, but everything else does as well. So you're making sure, the story is being told in the script, and then, people are being fed, and you have other people in that chain that, are in charge of like making sure you don't go overtime with the union worker. But as a director, though, you have to be able to delegate in very meaningful ways. And I think it's kind of cool that you
have to do both. You have to tell a good story, and you have to do it on time and on budget.
No problem.
If you can't do both, like the only person who can get away with stuff like that, like with not being on time or on budget, is James Cameron. If you have carte blanche like James Cameron, or if you have carte blanche like Nolan, a studio will come to you and they'll be like, he's gonna make us $1 billion. A lot of people, they bag on James Cameron because he yells on set. He's a mean person, but every movie comes out, it makes $1 billion.
And that's
so
what it comes down to.
at the end of the day, that's what it comes down to. And I get inspired a lot by directors. One of the most recent inspiring stories that I heard was Zack Snyder. He went to college for it, and then I believe he started his career making commercials at the age of 27. And now he's Zack Snyder. Like eventually he was on that path of, and he started out in commercial filmmaking, and then he made the jump. I'm pretty sure Nolan did commercials too.
Well, I think something that's pretty universal that you shared is that kind of the marker of success being like, will this run without me?
Yeah, that's my...
And I think regardless of if somebody it has this long-term vision of having a huge team and, directing, or if they just want to retire. I think that that's a really, good consideration and something to wrestle with as any business is, could this run without me? Because if I'm to fall off the face of the earth, if I'm hit by the bus, right? Like, could this continue to provide for my family or for, a legacy or, whatever. I mean, some people might have the vision to just, I want to grow it enough and have it sellable. And that's another goal. Like, well, how does it appeal to someone to even buy that or absorb that? But can it run without me? I think is a very universal business concept that needs to be asked and wrestled with, because if it cannot, then it will not sustain, right? And it's completely dependent on one person, which makes it a very fragile state.
For sure. Yeah, and there are, in order to answer the question of can it run without me, you have to answer the other question, where, if you look at your business, like you said, 30,000 feet, where do I pour gas to make it grow? And finding that gas. Or finding that piece of fire. So like if it's in Google marketing, or if it's in social media, or if it's in outreach or leads, if an investor came to me tomorrow and said, hey, I'll give you $100,000 or $200,000, could you turn it into $1 million? Do you know what you're going to do with that money? If you go on Shark Tank, for example, and you're, you pitch them and you ask for $500,000, are you going to be able to actually use that to grow the business? And if you don't know where to pour the gas, then you'll never be able to get a 5-person team or a 10-person team. If tomorrow I say like, oh, you know what, I want to cap out at 1.5 or $2 million a year with a 10-person team. I need to get X amount of leads for that. I know exactly where to put the money. I just need to get a loan. That's it. That's all it is. You just find out where to put the gas. You put the gas there, and everything else falls into place if you have everything already set up. So that's actually like what I'm literally analyzing all of 2023. That's like the biggest big question that I'm solving right now is like in the next, I feel like I'm so close. I feel like in the next 4 to 6 months, I'm like right there to answer the question of like, okay, now I know exactly where to put it. And then, the rest will be history.
Coming up to the edge to take that leap, right?
I'm like right there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
I'm
wonderful.
excited about it for sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to wrap up. They'll leave us on that cliffhanger. Maybe we'll have to check in.
Check in and be like, yeah, for sure.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
this has just been phenomenal. Thanks for joining us, Michael. It's wonderful to hear not only, you know, the video aspect, but I think the business aspect is really valuable to people that, you know, are starting out or even have been in it for years and might be in that rut or that stuck point of like, where do I, yes, this is really good food for thought, and we'll try to link whatever we can in our description. So just remember, if you're listening to this, you can definitely view the video version of it on YouTube. That's youtube.com/@SLAB Visuals. Michael with San Antonio Video Productions, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you guys for coming. You know, I'm happy to be here. My first podcast, and you guys made it a very enjoyable one.
Good. Yeah, likewise, you did. Yes.
Yeah. No, this has been a highlight of ours in San Antonio because we've been in town all week, but it's kind of cool to hear a little bit behind the scenes, you know, like what the market is. I always wonder about that when I travel. Is like, what's the market like here, you know, and what are the struggles or challenges that they face, you know, and like what that's like. So
It's always energizing to meet with other producers too.
Yeah,
This
for
is
sure.
great.
I mean, and like I said, like I'm 100% like an open book. You know, anybody that reaches out to me, or you know, I'm always very much like I always feel like, you know, growing together is always going to be a lot faster than growing by yourself.
Yes,
You know.
absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
all right, thank you.
Thanks for watching The SLAB.
Thank you.